Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down complex topics into clear, understandable insights.
Today, we're diving into a really powerful learning technique from applied behavior analysis called stimulus control transfer. We're going to look at how a skill goes from needing a prompt to being totally independent, the art of fading that support away, the super important difference between disparity and salience, some killer strategies, and finally, the ultimate goal of it all, generalization. Okay, let's get into it.
So, at its very heart, this is the puzzle we're trying to solve, right? How do we help an individual go from a place where a skill only happens when they get a reminder to a point where that exact same skill just happens, naturally, in the right situation? It's all about building that bridge from dependence to real, genuine independence.
So how do we actually build that bridge? Where do we even start? Well, the entire blueprint begins with one foundational idea called stimulus control.
Now, stimulus control sounds kind of technical, but the idea is actually super simple. It's just that our environment is filled with signals that make us do things. You know, a red light tells us to stop, a doorbell ringing makes us go to the door. When one of those specific signals reliably triggers a specific behavior, boom, that's stimulus control.
And this is happening around us all the time. We don't even notice it. For example, an individual learns that seeing their meal on the table is the signal to sit down and get ready to eat. The meal itself gains control over that behavior. Nobody has to say a word. The cue is just part of the environment.
And that brings us right to our main topic. Stimulus control transfer is just the fancy term for the process of intentionally shifting which signal triggers a behavior. We're moving control away from an artificial prompt, like me telling you what to do, to a much more natural cue, just like that meal on the table.
Okay, so if that's our goal, how do we actually do it? How do we build that bridge piece by piece? Well, the primary tool for the job involves prompting and, this is crucial, something called fading.
Fading is, well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the slow, gradual reduction of the help you're giving. You don't just yank the support away all at once. It's more like slowly turning down a dimmer switch on a light, giving the natural cue in the environment a chance to take over.
Let's use a classic example to make this real. Teaching someone to tie their shoes. You might start with full physical hand-over-hand help. Then, as they start to get it, you fade that to just a light touch on their hands. From there, maybe you just point to the laces. And eventually, the sight of their own untied shoes is the only cue they need. The control has been transferred. It's so cool. Now, to get really good at this, to build a super strong bridge, experts look at two critical variables that can make or break the process. They are disparity and salience.
Okay, first up is disparity. All this means is how different the choices are from each other. If the items are totally different, that's high disparity. If they look a lot alike, that's low disparity. Simple as that.
Think about it. If you're teaching vegetables, starting with a carrot, a tomato, and an eggplant is way easier. They have completely different shapes and colors. That's high disparity. Now, trying to teach the difference between kale, lettuce, and broccoli from the get-go, that's much tougher because they're all green and leafy. That's low disparity.
All right, so our second variable is salience. Now, this isn't about how different the items are from each other. This is about how much the correct choice pops from everything else around it. A bright flashing neon sign on a dark street is highly salient. It just screams, "Look at me!"
So here's the key distinction, the big takeaway. Disparity is a comparison between the different options. Salience is about how much one option stands out from the entire background. Understanding both of these lets you design learning situations so much more effectively. It's a game changer.
Okay, enough theory. What does this actually look like in the real world? When you get these concepts, you can use some incredibly powerful and practical strategies.
Let's talk about behavior management. Instead of just trying to stop a behavior, we can transfer control. So, for an individual who calls out in class when they feel ignored, we can teach them to raise their hand. Then, and this is the magic part, we transfer the trigger for that new behavior to a natural cue, like the teacher simply making eye contact with them. The control is no longer an internal feeling, it's an appropriate external signal.
And we can use salience too. Let's say we're teaching the difference between an E and an F. They're really similar, right? Well, we can make that unique bottom line on the E super salient by making it bright red. Once the individual is getting it right, we just gradually fade that color's brightness away until they're responding to the plain old shape of the letter itself. We just use salience as a temporary support and then faded it out.
But here's the thing.
Teaching a skill in one specific controlled setting, that's never the end of the story. The true test, the entire reason we do this work, is something called generalization.
Generalization is what makes a skill truly useful. It means you can take what you learned in one room and use it at school, at home, out with friends. It's knowing that a tiny Chihuahua and a giant Great Dane are both, in fact, dogs. This is the moment the skill crosses that bridge and becomes part of someone's real life.
And this doesn't just happen by accident. We plan for it. There are specific strategies to make it happen. You practice skills in the actual places they'll be used. You use tons of different examples, not just one picture of an apple, but lots of different apples. You get everyone in the individual's life involved. This is how you build skills that are flexible, durable, and actually stick around.
And this really summarizes the whole point. It's not about teaching isolated skills just to check a box. It's about creating lasting, meaningful change that truly empowers individuals and improves their quality of life. It's about fostering genuine independence.
When you really understand these principles, stimulus, control, transfer, fading, disparity, and salience, you realize you have this powerful, precise toolkit. And it really makes you think, what if learning challenges aren't permanent roadblocks? What if every single one is just a bridge waiting for us to build it?